We changed a few things we did last meeting, and actually one of my Q&As that make sure everybody turns their mic off right now. Those who want to speak, and turn your cameras off too. If you want to speak, turn your camera on. And Dave, you can leave yours on.
He needs to just mute his microphone with his camera.
You can leave yours on, Dave. Council members can leave their video on. Anyone in the public, when they want to speak, go ahead and turn your camera on, and that way we'll be able to recognize you and keep this a little bit more organized. You're also able to put it in, do your chats on the chat, and those will be read out loud. Those of you that have are just calling in, we'll ask for your questions at the end of the question periods that we have in front of us. For the work session, we have the Union Police contract up for discussion. And who would like to give me an overrun of the contract?
Mr. Lyman's giving me the look of.
Well, in what sense do you mean overrun?
Just kind of tell us how the negotiations went,
right.
The high points of what has changed, and where we're at now.
Okay. City attorney and I spent at least 7 hours going in 2 separate sessions with Officer Stuber as president of the police union here, and with the union representative actually lives in Miles City. But anyway, we went over this in great detail, and I don't think there was, I mean, line by line, I don't think there was much really that we changed. There were a few things, minor things. And essentially, what we're proposing, or what has been proposed, is that the officers in, we call it grade, the board in grade, which essentially involved, comes out to approximately a raise for each officer of about, am I right on this?
$1.90.
$1.90. I was going to say $2. Okay, $1.90 an hour across the board. And there was some discussion about increasing the mileage or the distance that an officer could live from city limit, and also take their vehicle home at night. That was not, I mean, we talked about that. That was not written into the contract, but we discussed at some length. I guess I'd like to say that there's been an awful lot of discussion about the police department, and I don't want to go into some of the comments have been pretty strong, but I think it's important to realize that the actions of one officer should not color the council response to the entire officer force. I think it's pretty clear to me we need a police department, and I personally don't have any reason to believe that the police department is in any way has been not living up to their responsibility. So, as a member of the council, I support the contract that we have in front of us. But there really isn't a whole lot more to say, except that we really went over it in great detail, and discussed it for.
What a days.
Anything to add, Rebecca?
Yeah, I could kind of clarify a little bit, add to what Mr. Lima was saying. There was a lot of grammar and wording issues that was cleared up in the contract. There were some things that just was horrible, poorly written. So we fixed that biggest bulk of the contract. Article 14 was removed because it was the Family Medical Leave Act, and that is a federal law that requires, if you have 50 or more employees, we have 23 of them, right? So that didn't even need to be in the contract. It's been in it for years, but nobody ever said anything. So that was totally removed too, so we don't have that issue coming up. As to the pay raise, what the patrol officers, and that's everyone but Greg Strock, Scott Cope, and Chief Wells. They're not patrol officers. They have different ranks. The patrol officers, what the union's proposing is that they be moved from after an officer's been employed for 1 year, finish their probationary period, they go from a grade 11 to a grade 12 pay matrix. Lonnie's requested that the pay matrix stay in effect because that way she doesn't have to use two different systems of calculating paychecks, which I can understand that. So after a year's probation, first, as the officers go from 11 to 12, that would be roughly a right now, a starting officer makes $20.86 an hour, and everyone except one officer, I think, fulfill their year's probation. Everybody would move up except for one right now, but they would go from making $20.86 an hour to $21.07 an hour without the contract. If they're right now, if we just stick to the normal pay matrix, so they would get a whole whopping 21 cent an hour raise under the current way. Because currently, that's what would happen. Right now, if there was no contract or anything, then we just get a 21 cent an hour raise. Under the proposal from the union was going from a grade 11 to a grade 12, will take, the officers will get an increase of $1.90 an hour. Then each year remaining in the contract, they have proposed for 3 years, they would just do their what's called steps. And correct me if I'm wrong, the step is like each year, it's like step longevity. And then in 2023, with back to negotiations again. So it would just kind of be that one raise. There was talk about the sergeant going up a grade 2, and he has been a sergeant for less than a year, and he went from a grade 11 all the way up to a grade 14 when he became a sergeant. And that's something, Mr. Lyman, you and I didn't know the other day. I found that out. So that, I think on the part of the city, he's already less than a year gone to a huge difference in pay. So this would just affect what are labeled or classified as patrol officers. There was one thing the chief pointed out that I think Mr. Norman and I both missed. In the grievance procedure, there was a part left in about if all the steps, and then it goes to the city council. Our city policy doesn't work that way. The employment appeals stop at the mayor. If you don't like the mayor, I guess you would go into district court. Everything's it's stopping at the mayor, but the union contract. And so, Mr. Lyman, we didn't talk about this, but I thought to be consistent, get everybody's policy the same, because I've actually seen it cause a problem with a former employee that wanted to file a union complaint, and it was so confusing, and it got messed up because of the wording and all. So it would be nice to get everybody's on the same plane, and that was actually on page 10. If the council's good with that, then that can be removed. Mr. Lyman and I would go back to the union to say, here's what the council has approved. The chief had wanted to take some issue in here about getting, where the officers could go to council if they wanted to, like especially after just the stress of the job, and I believe it was to pay 2 hours of comp time or comp time.
It was paid comp while they were getting 2 sessions of help.
the officers didn't seem to want that. I think it was a good idea on the chief's part too, because I mean, there is the stress of the job that they often don't realize. And he was explaining to me the distressing time after they come off of work and go home and all that. So, you know, have a serious situation, sometimes they need that. They didn't seem interested, so that'll be up to the officers to decide what you do. Those were some of the two biggest things that the chief pointed out to me about the contract. So it's basically if moving the officers from grade 11 to grade 12 is going to be close to $20,000 would be the difference. So that's not overtime, it's just the base salary. A little over, not almost $20,000.
We did talk, I believe the chief and I talked formally about additional for officers, or I don't know how to quite what the wording would be, but sensitivity training, I guess, would be the best way to say that. De-escalation training, however you want to say it. That, you know, I felt pretty comfortable talking with the chief that supports that. And I don't know whether this would involve moving funds from other parts of the police budget or additional funds or volunteering or what have you. But I think that is also an issue that was brought up by a number of people in the community that would go a ways toward helping to kind of, you know, make people feel better about the whole.
And just to address that, Tom, that I have talked with Kelly Heaton at SVS.
Mhm.
It's helped me tremendously. And I'll get with the chief on that also. She gave me some great resources. That would be something that the chief and I could go through. I'd really like, if we did that, we would bring somebody in just to have that done. And yes, chief.
Yeah, Mr. Lane.
We're kind of getting off the subject a little bit.
That's fine. Crisis intervention is what we call it in police, and it is a very important part in the job that we do. We deal oftentimes first on hand with maybe a emotional person that we need to recognize, and that training for that. And so I do believe very much in that kind of training. One of the things I think I would do, it would be cheaper for us, is we host the training. If we host trainings, we usually get free slots to the training. We bring in other law enforcement in the area, and I just think that that's something to do. However, those courses take some time to get scheduled, and especially in the world we live in today, that makes it even tougher to get to training. But it absolutely is very important. I believe in it. As Becky was talking about, I'm asking for, what I'm looking for is the opportunity that my officers need to talk to somebody professionally in the psychological field to de-stress or to get through some problems. I would let them do that there. Not that the city needs to know anything about what they're talking about, but the opportunity is provided for them to keep our officers healthy. And I believe strongly in the job that we have, that's important to do. And that's why I feel strong about having that included in the contract. Not making them go, but providing them an opportunity, if they want to do it, that they can use that and remain healthy. Maybe work through some problems that they can leave at the office there rather than bring to work with them the next day.
There's two parts to this. What we talked about, what you just mentioned.
Yes.
The problem that the officer himself might have, and the need for counseling or stress relief or crisis span, whatever. But we've also had a number of people in the community suggest that the officers also need to have training in crisis management, de-escalation with members of the community.
Yes.
And several people have pointed out to me quite strongly that this community has a number of resources, people who are essentially professional, you know, people who could provide some of that probably on a volunteer basis.
Right. Well, and that's awesome. Of course, confidentiality is utmost, which I understand that these are professionals and they understand that. I do provide a name, and we have had some officers take me up on it. Chesson provides a lot of help out of billings for law enforcement. He's who we use when we do a psychological evaluation on officers to make sure that they are fit for the job psychologically. And so he's done it for well over 20 years. He is well known. However, I would like to leave it up to the officers who they feel comfortable with, as long as they're licensed, as long as they're certified in that field. I feel that it's important that they feel comfortable in who that they talk to. And it's great that the community is really offer those services to our officers.
Right, but the other part of that I wanted to stress is that people have mentioned to me that there are times when people in this community they don't feel safe, or they feel threatened in some vague way, both by police and also by other members of the community. And so what they're suggesting is that we need to provide more training. I mean, the police are the front line, and you know, when they appear at a situation, whether it might be a domestic violence or it might be some other situation in the city, they, you know, obviously their own personal safety is important, but foremost for them, but they also need to be well versed in how to handle those situations without it becoming I don't know what you call it, a law enforcement situation.
So again, that's crisis intervention.
Yeah, let's get back to the contract. I understand what you're saying, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. We can get the chief in on it too, and I can kind of show you what I've done so far on what you're concerned about.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have two questions. I heard the city attorney as well as Chief Wells referring to making some counseling and such available, and I think the attorney even referred to page 10. I don't remember seeing or was not able to locate that in something. I'm just wanting to make sure. And then I heard an awful lot of talk about dollars per hour and stuff, which I also didn't see in here. But I guess my bigger question is just a clarification of what is the desired action of the governing body at some point in the future.
Okay. The two things that the chief brought up that he would like to see go back to the union as an additional, I guess, a counter offer or whatever, was to put in the contract the mental health. I don't want to call it mental health. I'm trying to find the right word. You know, stress counts and whatever you want to call it. And to add that if an officer chooses to take that advantage, that they would be rewarded with 2 hours of comp time.
Those two items were just items.
Oh, okay.
They were going to go back to the table with those
Right.
two items. Those were addition ones.
Okay.
The main thing is this gives council an opportunity to review the collective bargaining agreement that they've come up with now with the wage increase, and then the other things would also be negotiated in there also, the other two items. Lori.
Okay, so those are things to be added that aren't in our copy.
Correct. Lori.
Well, the only comments that I have heard are from people who say, we have very little crime here. Why do we need so many police officers? And my answer has been, the reason we have so little crime here is because we have so many police officers. And then I hadn't thought of it that way. So I think sometimes when we get a question, we have to have a simple answer that is easily and readily understood by the public. That's it.
More comments on the
Mayor?
contract, the bargaining agreement?
Mayor?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rob.
The citizens I come in contact with, for our population, there should be 4 officers. They're concerned about, a lot of people use the back streets, especially like Platte, where there's stop signs on the east and west sides of the street. It kind of makes it a thoroughfare. What else is on here? A lot of people say to defund the police department and reset it up, and put money out for people that are having different problems. And somebody told me this morning that in the top 10 most stressful jobs in the United States, the police department wasn't one of them. That he named off the top position was being the president. He named everybody that was assassinated and this and that, and I'm just like going, whoa. So that's all I've heard up to this point.
So do you have anything to say about the collective bargaining agreement with the police union and the city? Those other items are probably something that need to come up during a budget meeting.
To me, Mayor, I would have to vote against it, with people feeling that we're over-policed and it needs to be defunded, and I'm supposed to be the voice of the people that elected me.
Thank you, Robbie. Any other comments?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had a question. So understanding that those two elements that were raised are potential go-backs to be added to this, I'm curious if the chief feels the point that Councilman Lyman raised, is that as far as any additional training for, I don't know, sensitivity training or that kind of power dynamics training, is that something that there is a place to have that be included within this document, or is that something that is better addressed just internally with department policies and et cetera?
That'll be handled internally on that. It doesn't need to be written into the bargaining agreement.
Okay. And that's what I understood. I just want to make, and then will this come to the council to approve, or to approve the mayor or the police chief to sign, or I still unclear on that next step?
So when we come to the agreement, are we going to bring it back to the council one more time before we ask?
Yes, we need to.
Once we get these additions on the bargaining agreement, we'll bring it back to council to revisit it, and then it'll finally come back to the council for the finalization.
And I'll prepare a
Thank you.
resolution for the council if they pass it, to authorize you
Right.
and the chief to sign it.
There- yeah.
I know that's been kind of a misunderstanding a lot lately.
Okay. Any other comments on the bargaining agreement? Anything from the public?
None from Dave.
Any comments from the public on the bargaining agreement? We'll move forward then. The other one is on the work session, there's a discussion on the council warrant. This was a warrant paying a attorney bill, and who would like to give us I think council asked to have this put on. And Dave, do you want to fill us in on it?
Let me make sure I'm not on mute and then try talking. Thank you, Mayor. So this was a question that came up during the last council meeting. It was noticed, I think it was Micah that had inquired about a $2,100, $2,107.50 that had been reflected as being allocated to council budget. And then in kind of the follow-up conversation, what I heard was the council had asked for it. When the council asked for it, then it comes out of the council budget. And I didn't have a problem with that statement, other than I didn't remember the council having had any discussion on it at all, let alone a council for a budget. So for background, because I don't know who may or may not be aware of it. So what happened is there was a FOIA request that initiated back in, I want to say February, but
The 13th.
sorry?
February 13th.
Okay. So back in February, that there was a concern that Councilman Cameron and myself, Councilman Westwood, may have been texting back and forth. And if that was the case, was it in line or out of line as far as Montana sunshine laws were? And what had happened initially is that an attorney who's working with Councilman Cameron had responded and asked if the mayor was going to provide counsel to the two councilmen to allow them to respond, because normally what would happen is we would go to the city attorney. At that point, I will add that I responded, as well as I believe Councilman Cameron did. The short answer was that there wasn't any text or messages. And so it was basically kind of hard to go in and generate logs, but they were generated and created. And then I've since been responded 3 times. In fact, one of the things that I thought was interesting, I just got a letter today that I actually didn't get, Mayor, by way of information that was forwarded on to me. I don't know why it didn't come to me. But one of the things that was in this council, and this response is, if your responses are, this was from an outside counsel who we've received the bill for, if your responses are, there were no emails or text messages made or sent during the February 11, 20 council work session meeting between the hours of blah, 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 I suggest you each sign a sworn statement, which quite frankly is something I have stated internally several times that I'd be happy to do just as soon as I'm advised by an attorney who's working for me. So the attorney that was hired by the city, that the city received benefit, came through and said, here's the rules and here's the guidelines and here's when it's appropriate for council members to talk. But we as council, and specifically me as a council member, did not make the request, nor did we receive any benefit. And so I understand the purpose and the need of the city spending that money. I just think it should be accurately reflected in the budget and should not come out of the council budget. And so as I had reached out, the response was, let's bring this to the council for discussion. But that, I think, is, Mayor, is there anything you'd like to change, or are you happy with how I presented that?
Mary's on. Mary, go ahead and speak.
Oh, I'm just listening right now. I agree with everything Dave said. I think, though, that I only responded twice. The last time and the time in April. And then it was just a surprise. I just got Sam Painter's email right as I was signing on to this meeting tonight. And what I find is interesting is that he is saying that neither one of us responded. We responded how we were told. We were told to respond to Lonnie. And then she would, as the keeper of the records, would review the records and determine what was personal and what was not. And for some reason, Becky was going to have to sign a release of information if there was private information about her. It was never really made clear to us that this was the city making this request 3 times, and now 4 with today's email, or yeah, with today's letter from Sam. This is the 4th time. You know, and I did have some expenses because I had to buy access to a website that would allow me to download any iMessages, because my provider does not, my phone provider doesn't track iMessages. They just track text messages, which there were none of. I learned from Councilman Westwood how to go in to all of my Gmail accounts for a specific date and time and determine there was nothing. It's the city's policy that we won't create a record where none exists. When something is FOIA'd, if there's no record that exists, we're not supposed to create one. I created one the first time. I sent the record of my phone texts for I believe the day before and the day after the meeting, because I didn't have any text messages that day. I just crossed out the numbers so you couldn't see the numbers, and I sent that. That was creating a document, which I wasn't required to do. I don't know if I created any more documents. I'd have to go through my records and look. But
in fairness, that's an example where we've already responded in a way we probably should not have, in the absence of having any counsel to guide us on that.
Absolutely.
So what I don't want to do, Mayor, is I don't want to, and for the council too, this is something that I think is going to be wrapped up. We just have to figure out, like I said, I'm more than happy to sit down and write this. And that letter, by the way, Sam Painter indicates, his response indicates that he has in fact received our messages. So despite him saying he hasn't received them, I think it's just the fact that they're empty. But his advice was, make a sworn statement. And again, Sam Painter isn't working or representing me. And the advice when I called MMIA was wait until the city sues you, and then we'll provide counsel. So at this point, they're not willing to do anything and give me a representative to advise me and say, hey, don't create records where they don't exist, and don't write sworn statements. And so, like I said, I don't think if the fact that the city elected to do this, then whether it goes to the front office or to the legal department, certainly it's a bill and it needs to be paid. But I don't think it wasn't made. The request was not made by council, was not initiated by council. The decision to spend money in the way that it was spent was not made by council. So I don't think it should be council's budget. And that, to me, is what the discussion today is about.
And also, no council member benefited by having Sam Painter hired by the city.
So, Sam was brought into this with that memo from the other attorney that was representing Mary. And
yes, against the lawsuit that Becky brought against me, correct?
So I didn't catch that, but we're talking about this warrant and this situation with whatever the texting and emails was. So Sam was brought in as a third party, and that's the best way to do it. And I guess
we could send her the bill. If this was made in response to an email she sent, we could send her the bill and see what her response is.
Well, excuse me, but in Sam's latest letter, correspondence of tonight, he says, a request was made for public records is filed, and usually the city attorney responds by reviewing all documents gathered by staff to determine if the documents are public records and if the public records are confidential or private. In this case, the city attorney was unable to assist due to ongoing litigation and apparent conflict of interest. As a result, I was retained by the city to perform the duties of city attorney on the city's behalf. So the reason that he was retained was because there was a conflict of interest with the person that filed the FOIA request, who is the city attorney. So I don't think it's the council's responsibility to cover for the legal fees brought on by the legal department.
Micah, you had a question?
Just some clarification. I'm a little slow. What was the genesis of this?
I can explain it, Micah. Back on February the 11th, that was probably, I think, our last council meeting before COVID hit so bad. And you can watch, if you watch the video on YouTube, it's very clear. Mary Cameron's on her phone quite a bit for the meeting. Dave has his laptop up. Towards the end of the meeting, Dave asked a question. I think it was in the next to the last thing, whatever's in there, the correspondence, I guess. Asked me a question about a code section. And someone saw it on either phone or his iPad, I don't remember what, but it was obvious that there was something going on. And so because no, it is not. That is a violation of the Open Meetings Act and the Open Meetings Law. And it's funny because when it happened, had to go back and look, because that was one of the first things I learned in Montana law. I went back and found it, that before you get me licensed in Montana, you have to take a seminar with the state bar called Montana Law Seminar. That was one of the questions and one of the issues that they taught us. If you set up here as a council member and you text or email during a council meeting, that becomes public record. Because, and especially if it's two council members talking, because that leaves the public out of your deliberations. So,
Mayor,
I'm not through. Mike.
Mayor,
In order for the public record, you have to file a freedom of information request
Yes.
to get it.
Yes,
Right.
in order to get that. And so Missoula had this actually happen, and Jim Nugent, who is probably the foremost authority on municipal law in Montana, had written a long legal opinion to the city council members because they were emailing and texting back and forth about issues that were being debated, and you can't do that. So based on what I had seen with my own eyes, and I had seen going back and watching the video, and it was directed at me, questioning me, I filed a FOIA request, not on behalf of the city. So this is not the city. I'm not going to the city. I'm filing a FOIA request asking these two council members to produce each and every text message or email that they sent between them. I also asked for a copy of their phone records that shows the ingoing and outgoing texts and emails during the work session. Doesn't necessarily mean it was between them, but I asked for phone records. And I included the phone numbers that were applicable. And so far, it was I think I filed my FOIA request on February the 13th, and today, no phone records have been produced. And so I have sent 2 reservation letters to the phone carriers. The only option I have at this point, if they don't produce them, is to file in district court, and then the court will issue a warrant to the phone carrier, who will then in turn provide that information to me, but that costs money. Here's the problem I have is a public citizen could have done the same FOIA request I did, and they would be expecting to get their documents, and it's not been done. So because I could not advise the city, and because Ms. Cameron's attorney in another matter requested that counsel be appointed, outside of my knowledge, the mayor and Lottie contacted Sam Painter, who we usually contact if we have a conflict. And so that's where the bill originated from. Had this stuff been produced as requested, there wouldn't be that bill or that.
Sam did is exactly what Rebecca does on our other FOIA requests. So
If
the information should come in, then it goes through the city attorney.
If it was a private citizen, how it would be handled? Would the city go to Sam Painter on their behalf?
No, it would come to my desk, and I would have said, okay, Micah, they've asked for your phone records. Bring me these documents, and it's my job as the attorney to go through to make sure, one, that the information is even there, and then if it is relevant, if it is something that is public record that you had to produce. So my job would be to cover you as council members and make sure private stuff didn't get out and the public stuff that was requested did. Well, that's what Sam has been trying to do.
So we've done quite a few of these. Yeah, I mean they've asked for my emails, they've asked for my phone records, and that, and so we just gathered that all together, and Rebecca reviews that, make sure that there's no personal information that's going out, and that everything that is going back to that person that had the FOIA gets the information that they're asking for, if there is.
So it's your position that the bill is because Alderman Westwood and Alderman Cameron were non-compliant to the request. Am I understanding that correctly?
So Sam Painter did exactly what Rebecca normally does. So being Rebecca filed the FOIA request, we had to go to outside counsel to do that job.
I think what Micah was saying was Sam had to be hired because of non-compliance. I really don't remember.
No, his job was to get the records and see if they were relevant, make sure there was no personal information in it, and then bring it back, and we would give it to the FOIA.
And
Excuse me, Mayor, but that wasn't the procedure that you sent us in the letter. We were to send the information to Lonnie as the clerk of records. She was to review it and then determine whether or not what was private and what was public. It doesn't matter because there wasn't anything. We could send it 100 times and it's going to look the same.
so I did receive.
Yeah, part of this is exacerbated by the fact that there is nothing to send. And so I'm perfectly content to wait. It sounds, if I understood earlier what will ultimately happen, that the proposal that Mary's attorney put forth was that the city provide us with counsel on how to respond, given particularly the difficulty that there isn't anything to respond with. That to date has not occurred. If it were to occur, if the city were to provide counsel for us, I would be very happy to follow the advice of that counsel and respond as advised by that counsel. The second thing that I heard is that the initiator of the request is going to escalate it, not happy with the fact that there isn't anything there, which I am perfectly okay with, because as soon as there's a legal warrant or anything that resembles a lawsuit, then our insurance company will step in and provide coverage for us. But their indication was they were not going to provide coverage for us until there was something more than a request. I won't tell you what they told me to provide as my initial request, because that's not what I provided. What I did provide was actually a list of all the requested documents. It's just that all the lines are empty because there is nothing, there is no data. I can't produce a document that never existed.
Lonnie,
I was just gonna say that they did bring it to me, but after you received that letter from Alderman Cameron's attorney requesting outside counsel, we sent it to Sam.
Right.
So, and the last envelope that I got from Dave, it was wrote on the back to be only opened by Sam Painter. So that was sent to Sam Painter.
Let me tell you what the instructions read from the mayor, all 3 times. Based on the recommendation of city special counsel, I request you produce the copies in a sealed envelope. The appropriate city staff will review them to determine if they are public information or private information. That was the instructions. Those were the instructions I got. I didn't have anything to put in an envelope. I could give you an empty envelope, but I emailed you every time. There was nothing
So again, the purpose of the discussion tonight is not to the purpose of this discussion tonight is not to resolve this issue, although it's just to determine whether the request was initiated by council and therefore should be paid for by council.
Can I just respond to that too?
sure.
So it doesn't matter if it was requested by council or not. It dealt with a council matter. Council, if it would have had to do with my department, clerk department, it would have been charged out of the clerk's department. Public Works, if it was streets, it would have gone. That's how when you get a bill, you have to put it to the department it pertains to. So
In this instance, though, we have 2 city employees involved.
she was not, she did not file the FOIA request as the city attorney. She public she on her FOIA request.
And
Then why did she get an attorney? Why didn't we get Sam Painter? If she filed that as a private citizen.
It was the city.
The city got the
city.
attorney.
Oh,
so the concern here is that,
that
and it's built into the FOIA request,
Mhm.
because as the city clerk just stated it, any citizen could at any time make as many requests about as many things as they want to. And so built into the FOIA request is that the requester is responsible for paying any of the fees associated with that request. And the city's job is to get back with them and let them know what those fees will be. And then the requester can determine if whether they want to proceed or not.
That's if we were to supply her with any documents.
She pays for that. In Sam's letter that he sent to you guys, it states in there that the requester does not pay for his time.
We don't really know what
so,
information Sam got going in. I mean, what it sounds to me like what Lonnie's saying is that Becky filed this request as a private citizen.
I think this is,
And what it sounds to us like from Sam, and you know, I don't know, I just received this. I've only had minutes to look it over. That she filed as the city attorney for the city of Red Lodge.
No, she did not.
Well, maybe that needs to.
What you guys need to determine if the bill needs to be paid out of council or if it needs to come out. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Should it come out of council? Or
I think if this is a function that would have normally been done by our legal department, then that is where this bill should be attributed to, as our legal department.
I agree. Let's move to move it there.
Tom?
Could I got one more thing to say.
Okay.
The public that's heard about this situation feels it's kind of an embarrassment, and it's a pretty sad way to spend tax dollars if the city is suing each other. And well, anyways, that's all I got to say.
Do you want to move it forward, Tom? Or leave it where it's at?
well, I think we should, we've got other things to do. I think this has to be sorted out by the parties involved, not here.
The issue we have is that Lonnie has to close out the budget for the month and for the year. And so we have to know which account to assign this to so that she can close out the budget this month.
Account it needs to go to. So
We need to make that decision right now.
we need to close the books pretty soon, but I mean, we can move it forward to the next council meeting, I guess.
Yes.
The money's already come out. It's just a matter of at the end of the day what department it's going to come out of. It's just moving. So number one's already been paid.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
And you can apply it wherever it's decided to apply it.
For the year end book.
so
Yeah.
we already had two people that said they don't want it coming out of council.
I think there's
Three.
a lot of other things on our plate coming up, so I'm good with the way it is currently.
Good.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Come out of council, that's clear.
Robbie, is it okay to take the bill out of council?
No.
Good. 3 to 3.
You could break the code.
I say it comes out of council. Okay.
Let's make sure that it's an action item. And so what we'll do is I'll make a motion that it be adjusted and come out of the legal department. Then there can be discussion in the public meeting. And then that can go to vote. And if 3-3 and it's a tiebreaker, then it goes to the mayor, and I'm perfectly content with that.
That's a conflict.
But we can put it on, for action at the warrant. Are we doing it at warrants, or are we doing it as a separate budget amendment at another meeting?
It's not a budget. No.
So, truly, looking at who's involved in this too, we may have some conflict of interest also.
Well, I can't vote, and Dave can't vote, so there can't be a tie. So I guess it didn't pass.
So Dave can't make the motion either.
Yeah, and neither one of us can vote.
Exactly.
Well, is this okay?
It stays where it is.
So
like I said, there's two issues at hand here. One is that the issue still needs to be resolved, and the second one is that the council is accepting that our budget is going to reflect over budget over something that we as a council had zero control over and zero ways to mitigate in the future.
I agree.
So it's essentially it's 1 to 3 then, whether we move it forward or not. And so therefore we don't move it forward.
We'll have to have a decision before the year end, before.
The
Do we meet
council has said not to move forward.
the majority?
It's a majority.
The majority.
I thought the three of us here had voted to
To leave it as is.
leave it as is.
Right, so we don't move this issue forward to council.
So it's done.
No,
Done.
the money's been spent.
It's done.
Yeah. Let's get
Okay.
on- let's get on.
Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Okay. We got about 7 minutes, take a little break. You guys want? I'm gonna take.
Can I send a text now?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, we can go. The main thing is.
I told the mayor I had a solution that I didn't want
I was trying to scare them. They didn't even jump. We're gonna call this meeting to order. Heather, you wanna lead us in the pledge?
United States, of America, to the republic.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of officers.
Larson,
Here.
Cameron,
Here.
Hoffman,
Here.
Lyman,
Here.
Mahan,
Here.
Beamer,
Here,
Westwood.
Here.
Minutes of June 9th.
Move to approve the minutes of the working session on June 9th, 2020, as presented.
Second.
Comments? Roll call.
Cameron,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
Yes.
Beamer,
yes,
Westwood.
Is that Westwood?
Yeah.
Yes.
Minutes of June 23rd.
Move to approve the minutes of the regular session on June 9th, 2020, as presented with attachments.
23rd.
No,
No, 20?
regular session.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Two 9th ones first.
Second.
Regular.
Okay. Any comments? Roll call.
Cameron,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
Yes.
Beamer,
yes,
Westwood.
Yes.
Now we do June 23rd.
Correct. Move to approve the minutes for the working session on June 23rd, 2020, as presented with attachments.
Second.
Comments?
I move to replace the line on item 3. I believe it's page 48 or page 7, depending on which bundle you're looking at. Item 3, that reads, I gotta find it. I kind of got thrown off by that email.
Just a quick, were you at that meeting, Mary?
Move
No.
to amend number 3 that says council members present gave their permission for the chamber to move forward with the closure to reflect that council members present discussed the closure and voiced their support.
Were you at that meeting, Dave?
I was not.
Okay. Then we can't make the motions if you weren't attending the meeting.
We can, because we're allowed to vote for them even if we weren't there because it voices our support of the process.
But you weren't there to hear what we talked about. So I entertain a motion from anybody else. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Cameron.
Abstain.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Lyman.
Yes.
Meehan.
Yes.
Weimer.
Yes.
Westwood.
Abstain.
All right. Warrants payable.
Warrants payable. Move to approve the warrants assigned by this afternoon by myself and Tom Lyman for a total amount of $229,354.60. The outstanding ones were Northwestern Energy, $11,083.42. And we noticed that our bill is going down for Northwestern thanks to the new street lighting system. And the other one was Republic Services, $38,915.30. And that's up a little because the city is paying for the cans for the various parks around town to collect the trash. So for the total of $229,354.60, move to approve.
Second.
Comments?
I will just state that my understanding from the work session meeting is that I should be abstaining from the vote and as a potential conflict, and it has been advised that they'd like us to do that in advance. So I will be abstaining, so they'll have to obtain the 4 votes to approve warrants without my vote. And it's not a majority, it will require 4.
Okay. Any other comments? Roll call.
Cameron.
Abstain.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Lyman.
Yes.
Meehan.
Yes.
Weimer.
Abstained.
Why do you abstain, Rob? We need a reason.
The,
Do you want my reason?
What's that?
Well, we know your reason is a conflict, Mary.
No, that's not my reason.
Robbie, what's your reason for abstaining?
It really bothers me, the Republic bill. I think we need to look at how much our town spends on garbage collection, and the fact that we gave up the recycling and we need to really push that. It's crazy to me that much money is being spent on garbage collection.
And as you remember, you voted yes to renew that contract with Republic.
Yeah, I would like to take that back if I could.
No, that doesn't work.
Well,
3 votes.
I guess I changed
There's
my
a difference
mind.
between abstain and no. No is a no, and abstain is a legal reason that you're abstaining.
Right.
Oh, no.
Okay. Warrants payable though.
Yeah.
I,
You have 3 to 1.
3 to 1.
I think, I need to ask Westwood. Well, we're doing roll call, so.
Yeah, I need to weigh in still as an abstain.
Okay.
me too.
Do you have a 3 to 1? It's 3 to 1.
3 to 1. Good.
Pass that.
But city charter requires 4.
And Weimer voted no. He still voted. So you had 3 yeses, 1 no.
No.
But it does, an ordinance doesn't pass with a majority. An ordinance passes or a resolution passes with 4 or an action.
This is not an ordinance.
It's not an ordinance or a resolution. It's a motion to
Pay our
pay
bill.
pay our bill.
Understood. And that may be correct, that if it's not an ordinance or resolution, it may be a simple majority.
Right.
I move we move on to the next item.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't get to say why I abstained.
Okay.
I'd requested an electronic copy of the claims so that I could review them before the meeting, and I didn't get them till very, very late this afternoon and did not have time to look over them.
And
I do have concerns that there may be another bill in there for June that was credited or posted to the council budget. which I would oppose.
Okay, thank you. Warrants payable passes. Officer reports. Everybody got a copy of the officer's reports. The public is welcome to look at this also. It's what the police have done, did in June. Talks about traffic stops, warnings, all kinds of things, and you can kind of see what our police department is doing. Also, I want to tell you, Chief, that I forwarded this to Carbon County News, and they were very happy, and they would like a copy of this, as you do that every month. Sure, not a problem. They were really happy to finally get a report. I just hadn't thought about it before.
It's a good idea. I was going to suggest you put it on the city website.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea
That's not
either. Yeah, it's good.
Very, very good information, as I've said before.
Mayor's comments. We have a couple boards members that we're going to assign. Would like to appoint to the Sustainability Board member Jennifer Battles. I would like the consent of council on that.
Move to approve the mayor's appointment to the Sustainability Board member as presented.
Second.
Any comments?
She sounds very well qualified.
Very well qualified. Roll call on that?
Cameron,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Westwood,
Yes.
There were 2 slots open on that, so I would like to appoint Jeff DiBenedetto. Boy, say that 5
Yes,
times.
you said it right.
With council.
Move to approve the mayor's appointment of Jeff Benedetto.
Good job.
Second.
Any discussion on Jeff? Roll call.
Is Jeff still on planning board?
Yes.
Awesome.
Roll call.
Cameron,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes.
Also have an appointment to the library board, Kurt Neal.
Now,
Now, council approval.
move to approve Kurt Nell to the library board?
Second.
Comments? Roll call.
Excellent choice. So glad he's happy.
Cameron,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes.
Another quick note, would like the public to know and council that during this virus, that we were able to put in for some reimbursement on things that we've done around City Hall to make things safer around here. We got confirmation, we got a CRF relief fund of $91,470. So,
Fantastic. Thank you.
And that included the police wages.
police wages on it too.
Awesome.
So good job with the city clerks, and city attorney helped with it, and
Thank you.
I just forwarded emails.
That is awesome.
Talking about the virus, we have a special situation tonight here, and we decided to handle this under mayor's comments. As you know, we all have a large event coming to town this weekend, and I've been working with Dr. George, as a whole lot of other people too. The city is shutting down 2 side streets to try to keep social distancing. Heather Quinn has come forward with a idea to get more social distancing, similar to the 4th of July street closure. So I'm going to have Dave lead it off on it because he was the original one that called, and then Heather and Glenn, I'll have you guys fill in the blanks for us and answer questions. Dave, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. So Heather has, if you recall, had submitted her application very, very early on in the year before all this excitement, and we had approved it. And in the subsequent meeting, we had requested and asked that she continue to keep up to date with Dr. George, and as we have with all of the events. In a recent conversation, in fact, I want to say they were talking last night, Dr. George's direct input was, you need to make this coming Saturday happen kind of like the 4th of July. And so Heather had reached out, and we had talked a little bit about it earlier and wondered about it from a time standpoint. So she's going to present kind of her ideas. I know she's been already talking to Jim Bushnell, and I know she was reaching out to Chief Wells. I don't know if that conversation has happened yet. The concern is, and again, this is special time. So this because of the late development and Dr. George advising last night, this isn't on the agenda for action tonight. So there's nothing that we can officially do other than discuss it and voice our support. And then as far as an action item, there was a question that we need to kind of clarify what MDOT requires from the state or requires from the city to support it. So for the 4th of July, they were content with a letter from the mayor. But if they want the governing body to officially form a statement, then there may be a need to have a follow-up meeting between now and the end of the week, just so we can provide that. And my hope is that everybody will be happy and on board and support that. If they do decide that they want us to take that extra step, that we could come back to do that. But again, we all want to do whatever we can to help facilitate this and make this happen. And with that, I'll yield to Heather.
Heather, you're up.
First of all, forgive me with terminology because I'm nervous and I may not have the right words. Dr. George and I have been keeping in contact for some time now. And he did call me last night, which wasn't necessarily a surprise, except for what he had to say was a bit of a surprise. So what he asked me to do was talk to council, let you know that he had called and that he requested that we shut Main Street down again. Similar to 4th of July, but with we had a conversation about a little bit different because there are motorcycles involved. And as some of you may know who have spoke to us before in the past, we want to keep the bikes on Main Street. We consider Main Street the gallery and the bikes are the art. And part of the fun of it is looking at the motorcycles. George's response to me was he didn't care what I did with the bikes. He just wanted to make sure that the street was closed down. He did like the format of the 4th of July with the taverns being able to extend themselves out front of their businesses with the enclosures around them. I know some of them had enclosures and some of them did not, but it didn't seem to matter. It went off well. So that's his request. So we talked about putting bikes, what I call butt to curb, which is backing them up to the curb as what they always do, or toe to toe on the yellow line, which is front tire to front tire. One of my concerns with toe to toe on the yellow line, what might make it more difficult to get this to work for everybody, is it wouldn't allow for emergency traffic to get through. So if we kept it butt to butt and still allowed the middle part of Main Street to be walkable for the people there looking at the bikes, motorcyclists themselves, that would allow for extended social distancing as far as people walking. And then still allowing, of course, the bars and restaurants to extend out if they so choose to, or some of the businesses I know over the 4th of July also maybe had some racks out front, that type of thing, which is all welcome. We would just be requesting that the bikes also be able to park on Main Street next to whatever else is on Main Street. I know that there has been some concern about people walking down the middle of the street and the bikes. If anybody has been to Sturgis before, this happens all the time. When a bike starts, it's pretty much a heads up that it's going to be moving. And the bikers are very good about pedestrian traffic, and they move around quite easily through that. And we would request of the bikes that they travel in first gear down Main Street so that they're not, going 25 miles an hour down Main Street. And Also, a little bit different than the 4th of July would be the gates at from 8th Street to 14th Street closure with the big gates up, but space enough where the motorcycles could go through. The signage would be up for bike traffic only. I did talk to Tom Foley as well and just gave him a heads up that if this works, that we would ask that the flashing lights be on at each end of the street, Main Street, saying that Main Street is closed for bike traffic only. The side street, Jim and I had a brief conversation. I'm a little bit more nervous about those big gates. I like those candlestick orange things much better. But again, just having it so that the bikes could get off of Main Street quickly by using a side opening on the side streets that are left open, and also being able to get back on Main Street. And so that space would be limited just for a motorcycle. And then, of course, keeping the streets that are already closed. You mentioned 2 of them. I was thinking it was 3, but I 2. So not across from Snow Creek, just Snow Creek.
Oh, well, the Snow Creek has theirs.
Right, and then across.
And the west side of 11th from Broadway to the alley, the east side of 12th from Broadway to the alley.
Okay.
And that will be marked motorcycle parking only.
Okay.
So it just gives them more room.
Okay, then that's fabulous. And then if this were approved, Dr. Bush's request, we would also like to make some consideration for Babcock and Miles. I have not spoke with them about this at all, but I do know that sometimes they feel that they're left out when the things get closed up. So we would ask if it's our with you and that street remain open to Hauser and then be gated off so that the people on Main Street would have that nice access to their business as well. And I don't know if I'm missing anything. I'm sure I am, but that's kind of all I know. Oh, and I do have, Glenn got a letter. This came in 2019, basically, as Glenn said, that Tom was tired of him calling from the MDT for road closure. And it was more of just taking the temperature. We did not want to be the first one to request that Main Street be closed for an event. So we still were not going to request it here, but at the request of Dr. George, we're asking. So we do have a letter from MDT just stating that basically he's saying, as I stated in other conversations, that he would issue a permit with the following conditions, which are stated in here. So we can give you a copy of this as well. And I think
Heather, could you clarify what the conditions are from the city standpoint, please?
This is from MDT road closure, and yes, I will clarify that, but I would also want to have a conversation with the city in regards to costs of this, or if there are some ways to attach onto insurance policies with additional dollars from us. But it just says, present to city council, get their sign closure, send traffic control plan that shows signage and where traffic would be rerouted, and then certificate of liability insurance. And I look forward to hearing from you. That's what it says.
Micah.
Clarification. First off, I'm 100% in support of this event. I'm enthusiastic about seeing some downtown business for our business owners. Dates, 17th to the 19th.
So that's one of the things we're not sure of because of COVID. We have no idea of what we're going to get. It could be a much smaller crowd. It could be a much bigger crowd. If it is, it would be probably a more local crowd, more statewide, and then our little bumper states. We will have a better feel for this literally on Thursday because of camping. The vacation homes are still all booked. I'm assuming, I know I did one call from one of the hotels saying that they had 3 rooms available. That was about a week ago, so more likely they have filled those. So that population seems to be going to be the same. Camping will determine a lot. So right now the camping is started, and the security is up there, porta potties are there, hand washing stations are up there. And so by Thursday typically is when we know we got a crowd or we're off.
Question, when are you planning on doing the street closure?
Well, so Saturday, for sure, that's the big time. If we see that on Thursday morning that it's looking like it's gonna be an overflow crowd, we would ask to extend it to Friday as well. And then timing wise, so bikes typically leave on Friday and Saturday for the poker run. They start leaving town pretty heavy around 9 o'clock in the morning, and they don't start coming back until around 2. So I know there was some concerns about traffic on Main Street. Historically, it naturally seems to end up all motorcycles with one vehicle somewhere. You know, that's, but, so, you know, putting cones up at this, we would look to you all, but around between 11 and 12, starting to put cones or candles up. The game may take longer, the cones and candles may take less time, and then pulling them down. The bars at 12:30, 12, anybody know?
12:30
12:30?
is state law.
Thank you. 12:30. Typically, Main Street starts clearing off by 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So we could have everything down by midnight. Pulled off depending on if we're using candles or gates.
Your workforce, do you have it handled?
That would be called bikers.
Okay,
Yeah,
I like it.
they're a good, friendly crowd, and if they see what's going on, they'll help. And we have security up at the rodeo grounds that will come down and help. We have volunteers in this room that will help. We have a great mayor that will be up there. So
Heather, I'd recommend be optimistic and plan on Friday and Saturday both as far as the approval and getting either a letter or whatever action is deemed necessary. I think we'd be optimistic and plan on the larger side, just to err on the side of caution.
I think that's a good idea. We'll just plan on Friday and Saturday.
my only concern about that, and I will go with what all of you decide, is that if we are slow, the last thing we want to do is shut down Main Street and cost the businesses money.
And we just won't do it then.
Okay.
Okay, we'll want to. Jim.
So Mayor, we'll defer to you to determine if that's an action you can take, or if you need to bring us together again.
I'm sure we're going to be in contact a lot here in the next couple of days, so I'll make sure Glenn or Heather, and we'll make sure that we got it all dialed in. Jim will be part of that conversation, and I think you have something to say, Jim.
Well, what I'd like to see, I spoke with Heather earlier, and I think we've got a short-term deal, so tomorrow, Thursday, I think we ought to have a meeting considering myself, the mayor, Heather, then the police chief, and get a plan determined exactly how and what we want to do it. Now, as far as setting up the panels or the cones, the panels I believe are much easier, much better, and they're more stable. And they're not, like I said, you put the candles up, someone can move the candles and it opens the street. The panels work. We could open up where they could be side street accessible to the bikes. Plus, we could open those half the blocks that we're talking about. But I think we ought to have a meeting with all of us involved sometime tomorrow. Would be preferably so that we can make the plan for moving this stuff and setting it up. I think that's the main concern. Police chief, myself, mayor, I think we can make it work. I think we should make it work.
Jim, you're kind of representing Dr. George here, so.
Yeah. Dr. George and I suppose the bars. Dr. George spoke with me about 2.5 hours ago, and encouraged me to encourage you to listen to what Heather's saying. That extremely important that we keep people safe by creating as much distance as we can. As one bar owner, I was scared to death about what was going to happen 4th of July. You know what it's like. I mean, it's just packed. And having that extra space made it really work well.
Yeah.
We had a Carbon Stillwater Tapping Association meeting this afternoon. Everybody, particularly from Red Lodge, was kind of throwing up their hands. What are we going to do? Because at that time, per my conversation with you earlier, Bill, Mr. We thought that everybody was going to have to fit in the bar. And that was simply a recipe for spreading this disease. I want you to know that the bars are not cavalier about this. We have done what we can to try to prevent any spread. In my bar, I bought 1,000 of these things out to people so that they can wear them as a mask, and I ask them to do so. The Carbon Stillwater Association had CC Legends make up 2,500 scarves that every bar can give out to people that they can wear these bandanas as masks, because masks are 50 to 85% effective in helping stem the spread of this. So we're very interested in making it work, and we'll do what we can. We completely support this street closure idea, and we'll do all we can to keep things just exactly as we're supposed to do. Dr. George mentioned that we are supposed to, phase 2 rules, have a place for everybody to sit, even if they're outside. So we plan on putting, as many chairs and tables out as we can, as we did for the 4th of July. I never had all of mine filled. And we're going to do things according to what we're supposed to do, to the very best of our ability. But it's the big concern is for the health of our community and of our visitors, our employees, and ourselves. And then whether we would spread it to if we couldn't do that. So we really encourage you to consider this. The one thing that we need to have be very clear is whatever the rules are regarding the relaxing of the open container ordinance, because of course it doesn't do any good to have tables and chairs outside if people can't take their drink out there. They won't do it. The same would be true on the side streets. They're not going to want to be standing out on the side street, with their hands in their pockets. So we have to face reality about that. I think there are a lot more pressing concerns regarding this disease than are the concerns regarding whether somebody has a drink in their hand on the street. We take pretty good care of that. Bars do. We're pretty careful about it. So I can speak for myself. And I think that my fellow bar owners are the same way.
I would like to just add to that is we're not asking for open containers, but we would be asking for leniency because it's going to happen. People are going to walk down the street with a drink or whatever it might, but we're not asking for open containers.
I do want to say Jim worked on this a couple of weeks ago. We just needed a sponsor, so thanks for stepping up. Chief Wells.
Absolutely in favor of making this a good event, absolutely. But there are a few concerns that I have, which one being the cars on the street and getting them moved off. And that can be, we do that during the 4th of July, it can be taken care of. And like I said, I just heard about this right before the meeting. So trying to wrap my mind around this as well as doing law enforcement. My recommendation, I'm all for cording off areas for the bars to drink, give people more room to do that. I ask though that it be very clear, either we have an open container, which is what I recommend in that gated area, that the city allow that, or drinking to be. And with that being done, that all alcoholic beverages be served in plastic containers, whether they be cups or whether they be plastic bottles. That's a safety issue for me. Other than that, I really don't have an issue. My issue is, like I said, we can get it with that on Thursday as far as getting those vehicles moved out. Vehicles, pedestrians, kids, stuff running through, it can be really dangerous. And that's my concern. And I think it can be overcome. And I think it'll be a positive event for our community. I absolutely want to bring business to our businesses, especially in light of this COVID. So absolutely can work. And I agree with Heather. The bikes on the street are absolutely art. And I like that kind of art. So hopefully I'll be down there participating in looking at the bikes on the street. But like I said, I think it can. My recommendation to the council, designate or relax the open container within the boundaries, and I think there needs to be signs indicating that all open containers must be boundaries of that we have for. Make it open.
Sure.
May I? The 4th of July event was a huge success, not only in the safety factor, but also in creating business for our downtown. Thanks to the team that was put together on short notice for that event as well. I didn't see any trouble come from it. It was just a huge win. And I think it set Red Lodge apart as a leader in thinking out of the box and dealing with these situations. Heather has an even shorter time period, and I think we need to be really supportive of what she monumental task, but it can be done with everybody's help, and it can be done well. I don't have board approval because it happened so quickly, but I personally think this is a fabulous idea, and I'm all about helping her with it.
Tim.
Just to be clear, when you're saying that the same as we did for the 4th, you want the barriers in front of the individual so that each bar and restaurant that's serving alcohol will need their own.
So the bars need to comply with the local and state legal laws. I think as long as there's an open container, if it's an open container area, there may not have to be. It works better if they have their own area, because then they're responsible for that area to make sure that.
So are you saying they have to do that, or?
I am not at this point. I need to, like you said, this all kind of just sprung me up.
Okay. Okay. I'll let you have your meeting up Thursday. Thanks.
What happened over the 4th of July is that we all had to comply with state law. So we all had in requests for catering because we were outside our front door. And even though we were only 20 feet away from our business, we had to, every bar had to have a catering endorsement on their license from the state to do this. And then we turn in a fee of $35 with request to the chief of police. And then we are allowed to have in that boundary where we're serving and not outside. It worked without a hitch, I thought. It worked very well. There were no complaints. Everybody, there was nobody at my place that tried to leave with their drink in their hand.
Okay, time fine, very much to get that done again with all of the getting that healing, or is it still good here?
No, it's only good for an event. So what we would have to do is we would have to put in another form to you and say what the dates were and what we're planning on doing. The catering endorsement is good for a year from the state. We just have to note, the form for you is simply to notify you that that's what we're doing. That's the point of it. And so that we would have to do that, and I'll get that word out to the other bar owners, that they would need to do that if you allow that.
So discussion from council.
That's best practice. Just follow the protocol we used July 4th, especially since it worked well.
Mary.
First of all, I just want to say that this is a really fabulous idea. In order to make it all on the up and up, can we hold a special meeting on Thursday or Friday to grant an exception to the open container law in order that we can help those establishments protect those liquor licenses, because those are pretty big assets for them, and also to satisfy the MDOT requirements, because they may be serving alcohol on the state highway. And then I wanted to add, and I want to let Jim know this, and I'll go around to the other taverns in town and let them know that I have new event kits, and they have card scanners and signage and yellow tape and everything that you'll need to rope off your area or whatever you're going to do. And we can help you with that. And you can use those for free. So I'll come around Thursday.
That's awesome. Thank you, Maureen.
Any more council comments on this? Gloria?
I'm very much in favor of it. I think it's an excellent idea. And I think as a council, we have to show the community that we support them. When this disease has wiped out so much of their profit for such a long period of time, and we need to be pro on anything that's going to alter that on the slightest little bit. In addition to which, once we have some of these plans in place, heaven forbid that something like this should occur again, there will be a plan, and we won't have to sit around and talk about how we're going to handle this. And by the way, I want to use those gates, those red gates for the 4th of July for the parade. So, good luck.
So, Tim?
I'd just like to say, it's definitely do it right, do what you need to. Waiting until Thursday or Friday isn't going to work with getting it through the state and insurance. The council needs to make a decision so that have time to get insurance and time to get the state approval. I know that, I mean, just from speaking from experience, we have one more week than she has, and we were right at the deadline on everything. So waiting until Thursday or Friday, just say no now.
And I guess what I would like to bring up to council is I need to write a letter to MDOT so that they get the street closure. I would need some kind of an approval from council. This is not on the agenda, but I would need something to get that letter to Heather so that she could get that going. We could notice a special meeting on Thursday on the open container, if that would feel good.
Could we do all that tonight?
It's not an agenda item, so no, we can't.
What is it for an emergency meeting? How many hours notice do we need to give the public?
48. I think it's 48 hours.
Is that what it was for the water, frozen water? It was 48?
That was an emergency meeting.
This could be an emergency related to COVID.
We can do the 48-hour meeting to waive the open container. I mean, if everybody would just, if you would allow me to write the letter to get that part of it going, would help.
Can we do that and then schedule a meeting for 8 o'clock on Thursday, 8 p.m.? That's 48 hours.
I don't think that's enough time.
To get the letter and get Heather needs to get this done is like, you need that tomorrow.
Well, this letter.
We'll do it, and then we'll
I think what I heard was the letter now and then the special container Thursday evening so that it was done before Friday.
That's where I was moving.
Yeah.
We got the
I think you guys are both saying the same thing.
What's that?
So on this letter, it says that to prevent the city council to get their sign off on the closure.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know that there's more to it though, because we're extending the taverns into the street.
That's a separate issue.
Assuming that's more than what we need.
So,
correct?
Right.
Okay.
So what we're saying is that we need council approval
Street closure.
for the
Street closure.
For the open container.
And last time we just did a straw man poll as opposed to an agenda item.
If I would just get council, go ahead, Rebecca.
I need to check with MMIA because they do not recommend ever waiving the open container. regulation. So we need to make sure they will actually cover us if the council does move forward with that.
Okay.
Insurance.
And
coverage,
the thing that was, and Sherry, you and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was, and, you know, is that because the businesses do this, it's like an extension of their restaurant.
Mhm.
And if they, people stay in that area, then we don't, as city council, or y'all as city council, not like the city, doesn't have to waive an open container so that people walk up and down the street. And so the individual bars, restaurants control it just like in their restaurant.
So it's an extension of the business.
It's an extension.
What we were told, this was the information that Charlie from the Snow Creek got. Nobody can walk out of your business with an open container. You can sell off premise in a closed container. In order to walk out of your bar, out of your brick and mortar to outside with an open container, you need a catering license. And you need to make that, do the permitting that happens. You cannot cater your own event. Right. So you have to have a sponsoring event, which the chamber was the sponsor of the event. And then we had each caterer sign a contract that we wrote up. So it's like.
And Tim, your understanding is that waived the need for the council to do anything, correct?
Let's let Tim finish there.
So that's what we got. That came from the state. Charlie talked to him and I talked to him, and we got the same message. You cannot walk out of a bar with an open container. So that, I mean, that's that different thing.
But with the extension of the deal, that's considered part of their business.
No.
Catering.
When you have a catering license, then the state is giving permission to operate your business there. For me, I don't know how other bars do it with their liquor liability, but my insurance covers wherever I'm legally able to serve people consume alcohol. I don't know how others do it. Liquor liability insurance is not a requirement, but I don't know anybody that doesn't have it. So I think
my understanding in Billings, I'm sorry.
I think it'd be have some serious issues here if we somehow say it's okay to walk outside with beyond the perimeters that you're setting.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would say we should not go there. I would hope that the police department would be, rather than arrest somebody on the spot, would urge them to go back into the appropriate area.
So
no need, should we have
I may just
to open it wide open.
Right.
No, I'm saying if the businesses are extending their business and that's under your insurance and you do your catering license, I don't think that we need to do anything with the open container.
Right.
And nobody is suggesting that they go outside those perimeters. And in previous years, there has not been, to my knowledge, really any problem with people walking up and down the street with open containers. So I don't know why there would be this year either. We make it very clear that they have to stay with that.
Yeah.
Or just the fact that you have a boundary.
Right.
But, pardon me for interrupting, but Jim, you're right. I don't think we've ever had a problem with that either. They people to have something different to do, that they're more than happy to stay where the destination is. At least that's been our experience.
And I do know that the police, on years before, someone with an open container either is poured out or they go back to where they came from.
Yeah, we don't have very many people who walk down the street with them. Oftentimes with the motorcycle culture, they're aware of Sturgis. Sturgis, if you walk outside, there's no warning to get cited. We not do that. We ask them to go back into a building and consume the alcohol, or if they don't want to, then they need to pour it out. And I've had very, very, very compliance with most of the people. Like you said, most of the people that are at this rally are phenomenal people and are just here to have a good time and want to comply with the law. So I think that it's a great event. I think it's good for our city. And like I said, we do that. We ask them to either consume it where they bought it or go back or pour it out down the street.
So what do we need to do to get her letter, or get you to write her a letter? What does council need to do?
Rebecca, I'm kind of relying on you on this one. Well, you know, the last one we did just a head nod at the work session, and that got the letter written.
Maybe.
Here's a nodding head.
Okay.
And maybe just say this.
Me too.
Problem with you writing a letter.
Okay. So does anyone have a problem with me writing a letter of support to MDOT on the street closure?
No, sir.
No.
No problem.
Time is of the essence.
Mary?
I don't have a problem with it if we're going to have a special meeting to make it all according to the law. We can't really vote on something if it's not on for action, but I don't have a problem with you voting or writing a letter of support for this. And as long as we even do it retroactively after, you know, on Thursday, we get together and 48 hours from now, and we have one thing on the agenda, and it's posted to the public. That's just the way
legal.
our sunshine laws work.
And that's to
Good point.
in the letter.
Right. So I think we're all in favor. We're all in favor and in support. We're looking for the least number of check boxes between here and yes. And I will speak only for myself, but I am willing to come forward at a future time if it's deemed necessary. And it may not be deemed necessary, but if it's deemed necessary for us to have a follow-up action, I will do everything I can to avail myself, to make myself available for that.
James?
Me too.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, Mr. Mayor, I think I shared that information with you and Jim. Our city codes do actually allow the public works director to close streets. He actually has that authority. You know, when we talked about the 4th of July event and having the discussion with the council, you know, it was, we want to be open and have council support for taking such a large action. But I just want to point out that we actually don't need council approval to close the street. Alcohol, we absolutely do. And, you know, we want, obviously, buy-in from the community and the council when we have large events. And we dramatically alter the use of public lands. But Jim, actually, in his public works director capacity, does have that authority. But I think the point we were making, like, you know, wanting council approval was we want the support and to show the state and the community that this is supported by the state.
So I'll write the letter. Okay, I'm writing the letter. I'll have it tomorrow. I think we need to have a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock here?
Yeah.
We have court at 10 in the morning.
Okay. What time don't you have court?
Who's we?
Around 11, and we do not have it again until 1. So if you do like 11,
Let's do 11 o'clock. Jim, do you want to be in on that?
If you need me to be, I can be, but
You're always needed, Jim.
All right.
I'll be here.
Yes. Okay. Mike.
Does the council need to be there?
Heather, was her question about the insurance resolved?
Not yet, but we can probably talk about that tomorrow. Okay.
That's not something that we need to,
No.
it's just, that's either legal or not to have a rider. Is that basically the ask?
Yeah, and the cost, and I am just finishing up some other insurance, so it's semi on hold. Get a package.
And I'll have that as part of my letter that, you know, the insurance needs to be okay. All right.
Mayor, thank you for the accommodation tonight. Special circumstances, much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all. Appreciate it very much.
So we're on 11 tomorrow.
Do I need to be there?
You can sure come if you would like.
11 o'clock tomorrow. Can there be the same
What's that?
I need to go in there anyways.
Okay. Good.
You're going as a citizen, not as a council member. When you go to that, if that was your question.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you think another council meeting, a special one, is going to be necessary?
I don't believe so, since we're doing the
Yes.
Jim's dialed in on that, that, and
Yeah.
just giving me
I think we need to make that clear that we don't have to have.
that we don't have to have a special. Right. So no special meeting.
But if we do it on Thursday day, there's the police event, so at the airport.
It has to be 48 hours, so it'd be good. So let's move on to public comments. Anybody may address the council at this time on any topic within the city's jurisdiction, not specifically on the agenda.
And that I have an invitation for the council.
Okay, Pam. Can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Neither can I. I've got my hearing aids.
She's not muted on my end.
What's that?
She's not muted on my end. So.
No, you're open here, Pam.
And she's typing.
She can dial in separately, even though she's video here. She could dial in, and we could hear her via the dial in.
Do you want to dial in?
She said she's emailed.
Hold on, and I'll.
Council.
All right, she's emailing an invitation to council and the city on an event that's coming up, and we'll be receiving that shortly, and we'll move forward on that.
The event.
When's the event again, Pam?
August 1st.
August 1st.
And
Give us the title of it again, Pam.
it's anti-racism.
Yeah, it's very good. I was at the first one they had here in town. It's very good, very eye-opening. So it'll be something great for council members, city people.
She emailed it to you, Gloria.
Oh,
yeah. So thank you, Pam. Any other public comments? No more public comments. We'll move on to old business. Resolution 3548, public stability in the budget process.
Move to approve resolution number 3548, a resolution of the City Council of Red Lodge, Montana regarding the budget process and ensuring public input.
Second.
Second.
Comments?
Only that
Mayor, thank you for putting this on the agenda. This was a response to a lot of the feedback we got from the public last year. We got some very well articulated and well-meaning input. I was able to reach out and work with some of those folks to help put this together. I had passed on the original information from our working document to the city attorney. There were a couple of changes that she had made that I initially had concerns about, but I've since had time to research them. In the original notes, I had said, whereas city residents are entitled to observe the governing process. And she had noted in hers, and correctly so, I was able to chase down in the Constitution of the state of Montana, in Article 2, Part 2, Section 8, that they do have a right to participate, and it goes through and describes that. So I had no concerns. Initially, I'd had a concern with expanding that involvement. The biggest goal is just make sure that the public has an opportunity to have insight and input and be heard before the final meeting. So while there is a statutory requirement that we always have a public hearing, it's a little late to bring it up at the last hour because it doesn't really give us an opportunity to respond. So the therefores in this were basically just how we are going to meet the requirements set out in the whereas. And thank you to the city attorney for her assistance in helping put this together.
Thank you, Dave. To keep from walking over everybody, can you just raise your hand when you're ready to talk, and then I'll call on you? Gloria.
Thank you. The budget process has always been public. Sometime in all the many years I've been doing this, we've had 2 or 3 people. Sometimes we've had 5 or 6, but it's always been a public process.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, Jen Battles did comment.
Yeah, we better read it.
Okay. Jen Battles said, I'd like to thank Dave for writing this resolution, and I encourage the council to improve budget transparency and public engagement with the budget by voting yes on this resolution. As a resident who has pushed for more opportunities for the public to influence budget priorities, I view this resolution as a good faith effort to include the public in the budget process, and it goes a long way in building community trust in the budget process.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any more comments? Roll call.
One question.
Dave?
In our therefores, right now our action says that we will post the website no later than May. It doesn't have a date, so I guess that's assumed to be the end of May, and if so, we should maybe articulate it. And before, the proposal was that we would update it monthly. The as presented says update draft as soon as possible, which to me is a higher burden of load, but I still think we should put if we're going to do that, we should put within X days, and I don't care what that number is, but I think we should clarify just so that it eliminates the ambiguity.
Those changes were made at Lonnie's request, not to put a specific date because it could fall on a weekend. And so that's why it was done this way to accommodate, to deal with calendars and depending on what goes on. And
Right.
as soon as possible was put in there,
Right.
As soon as it's done, it's to be posted.
Leaving an open trail.
Yes, that's why that was changed.
It will be posted, but depending on the calendar.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah.
I don't think we want to pay her.
And my concern was protecting Lonnie, so if she's good with the wording, I'm good with the wording.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Roll call.
Cameron,
Yes.
Hoffman,
Yes.
Lyman,
Yes.
Mahan,
Yes.
Weimer,
Yes.
Westwood.
Yes, thank you all.
New business, environmental assessment review for stormwater PDR. James, you want to talk to that?
The environmental assessment is a requirement of the TSAT process, the Treasury State Endowment Program. That we will be applying for monies through that program for a stormwater project. We have to have a public hearing and have the environmental assessment review in order to submit that grant. I'd like to add one thing too. The grant is due August. I provided the council members here a draft of a resolution. We'll have to pass before that August 3rd deadline. So we would need to on July 28th in order to get the grant. So please take a look at that resolution. We do have Brandon Duffy on the line from Great West Engineering to speak to it a little bit.
Brandon?
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, Mayor. As James mentioned, yeah, as part of the TSEP process, we have to go through and do an environmental assessment that follows the NEPA guidelines, which we have done. If you remember, about a month ago, I was there and gave a presentation on the PER and the TSEP application. That was submitted to correct James. That was submitted at the deadline on June 12th. But they did have an extended deadline for public participation items due to COVID, which this NEPA process and the public input for the EA falls under that. So that's why we are doing it now. And that deadline is August 3rd. As James mentioned, we had a little miscommunication when we were setting up the stuff last Thursday to get it on the agenda for this week. That resolution should have been part of it. But at the next council meeting, that will need to be voted on and passed in order for us to submit the EA to TCEP by the deadline. What the EA is, what we did for the EA is we go through and we submit letters on the proposed project. So for the stormwater project, we submitted letters to federal, state, and local agencies to get environmental impacts, concerns associated with the project that we're doing, just to kind of identify if there's any major impacts environmentally that's going to prevent us from moving forward with any projects that were identified in the PER. And TCEP has a environmental checklist that we run through and we filled out. The link was provided for that in the documents there. It's been posted online for public comment. It's been posted on your guys' website and available down at the City Hall. And we have also sent out 2 advertisements letting people know that the EA is out there for review and where they can submit their comments to us. We have not, to date, I have not received any comments. James can chime in if he's received any public comment on it. And then to summarize the findings of the environmental assessment, there was a couple items that were identified for mitigation and a couple items that required permitting. A few things that we identified for mitigation was there's some underground storage tanks located throughout town, old abandoned ones that may have a potential for petroleum contaminated soils. So those will need to be addressed on a site-by-site specific basis, which will be handled during the design phase. As always, there's buried utilities out there that will be located and may need to be relocated, which isn't a big issue. And then there's also the potential for wetland delineation and maybe wetland impacts where the stormwater ties into the existing MDT outfall. I think now that we've revised it from the last submittal to where we're tying into the MDT ditch up there, I think the impacts to the wetlands is less likely, but that's something, again, that we will look at during the design phase and identify those exact impacts. And then the permitting items that were identified is a construction dewatering, or are all construction permits that will be on the contractor when construction of the improvements moves forward. Those being a dewatering permit if they encounter groundwater, construction stormwater permit if they disturb over an acre of ground, and then if we're working in or near Rock Creek, we may need to work with the Army Corps of Engineers and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, as well as get a floodplain permit if we were within the 100-year floodplain, which we should not be. So that's just a quick summary of the environmental. There was nothing significant that was identified in the environmental review that we completed. And our recommendation to the city would be to accept the environmental assessment as is, and that there's no need to do the next level, which is an EIS document. And so the resolution that James passed around has the language for that, basically accepting that this environmental assessment is enough review for our projects, and we can move forward from there.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Any comments on the environmental assessment review? Any comments from the public? We'll close public hearing. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to correspondence. Any correspondence?
I have some correspondence. I received quite a bit of correspondence, actually. So I'm just going to go through each one of them and tell who sent it. Some of them already have gone out, but I'll make sure that Lonnie gets copies of each of these to add to the minutes. So on June 28th, I received correspondence from Sherry Scarborough, and her concern was about COVID restrictions, and she would like the city council to discuss the use of masks. Today, I received correspondence from Mike Booth, and he wanted me to read the following. The wave of visitors from COVID-ravaged states such as California, Florida, Arizona, Texas, and others, will the city consider similar to Whitefish to protect businesses and public health? I'm assuming he means with a mask ordinance. On July 3rd, I received correspondence from Dr. George, and he just wanted me to send out his latest recommendations. He didn't have a number for the mayor, and so I sent it to all the mayor and or all the council and the mayor, and Glory responded with your phone number. Thank you very much, Glory. I appreciated that. On July 4th, I received correspondence. This also went to the mayor and to Dave Westwood from Chris Mullaney, and she had a complaint about the fireworks and about the fact that it was impossible to contact the RLPD. I think they were just backed up at dispatch. She does expect the council to address to prepare a plan for how it will be addressed next year. Received on July 12th from Michael Sikowski. He also had the same issues with the fireworks and would like to know what the council's going to do next year to prevent or respond to those issues. Michael also had a question about the resort tax, and he had emailed in April, and I think that this is a question for the mayor, so I'm going to forward that question to the mayor on the resort tax because it's about resort tax items. I'll send that earlier email on to you, Bill. You can respond to him. And then the last email that I have on the list here, we all received from Jail Campy this morning. And it is regarding COVID and implementing restrictions. She'd like to see at least some discussion about that at the council level. And that's what I have for correspondence.
Right.
Well, in addition to Sam Painter's correspondence, so I don't know how we address that. I just received that just right as I was opening up GoToMeeting to come to this meeting. So I don't know. I don't have the benefit of an attorney. And like Dave said, I guess I wait until we go to court and MMIA will assign us attorneys.
Okay,
that's all I've got.
Correspondence?
No, sir.
Number 11.
Adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I knew you were going to.